Mike, we talked about the Philadelphia Eagles in the last segment we did. Let's talk NFL overall. We've got, 6 weeks in. It should give us a pretty good gauge of what's going on, though I'll say in the NFC, I have no clue. The teams I thought, Dallas, Minnesota, even Green Bay were teams I thought were going to really shine this year, and they haven't.
Well, a couple of things. Number one, Green Bay Minnesota's really relying on a unique situation with Favre, and that's almost off the charts. Dallas is a team. Dallas is a mess. Dallas has unbelievable failure to pay attention to detail, constant mistakes of the sloppy, careless nature. And one of the things that I persistently read about Dallas is that they don't really have a guy who functions as the head coach. Wade Phillips is kind of a defensive coordinator, and he's the guy who does the press conference. But other than that, he's not. He doesn't really act like a head coach. And of course they have Garrett, the offensive coordinator, who is constantly being criticized for like an idiot, but that team seems to lack quality control, to me, for lack of a better term. And they continually shoot themselves in the foot because of that. And so I don't think they're going to be much of a factor. I think they'll probably upset some people, but they're just a bad team, and not because of talent.
Dallas, as you were saying that, I was thinking, the guy who really thinks he's the head coach is Jerry Jones. They ought to do like they had to do early in the early 80s when Ted Turner fired, I think it was Torrey at the time, Joe Torrey, and Ted Turner sat down there, not even in a uniform, in a suit with a hat on. Jerry Jones would just come down in a suit with the cap on the head and
You're right. That's a good point. It's a good point because we hear an awful lot. If you watch ESPN, who's to blame for what's wrong with the Dallas Cowboys? Jerry Jones is, because he created this goofy situation where they don't have a guy who functions as the head coach. I don't think Jerry Jones is getting ripped enough for this.
No, if Bill Parcells was still there and he had the discipline, in fact, I think they'd be better off. Green Bay has a ton of injuries. I'm not just saying that.
I was going to say that. Green Bay's beat up. Of those three teams you mentioned, you have the goofiness with Favre, what we just talked about with Dallas. Green Bay's really beat up. I think they have a chance to get back healthy.
In all three situations, those teams are over the barometer. Goofiness, lack of leadership, and the injuries. Every team gets injuries, but they've got enough for three teams.
They do. They really do.
It's funny. In the NFC, again, the Eagles are leading their division, a 4-2 record with the Giants. I wouldn't have thunk it. AFC, you've got that's probably the better quality teams in all of football. There's like 5 or 6 right now that you'd almost rank ahead of any team in the NFC. Mm-hmm. Maybe the Saints.
Well, that's one of the things I think. We tend to talk about. We have long said. My feeling about this league this year is everybody's going to be 8-8, and I sort of think that maybe last week some teams kind of emerged, but maybe a month from now we'll think that sounds ridiculous. But I do think that maybe the Saints last week, for the first time this year, started to look like last year's Saints.
One of the things about the Saints is the defense they play. There was Tampa Bay, but the way they shut them down, they have a very good pass defense for the Saints.
And Drew Brees
but
is
you can't,
in the bank.
It was Tampa Bay, but Atlanta was one of those teams 2 weeks ago. I would have thought they're emerging, and the Eagles made them look silly out there.
Yeah, so it's this endless ebb and flow.
AFC. Both the Ravens and New England look very good against each other.
That was a high-level game.
Colts are still competitive. I think they've taken a step back.
Yeah, I agree.
You look out here, the Jets, they look really good. The Steelers, fantastic. Now they're only going to get stronger now they have their starting quarterback, Roethlisberger, back. And I think what I saw from the Titans defensively and the way they run that offense, Kerry Collins is back in there a little bit with Vince Young. Really good.
To me, that's a wait and see, because that might have been one of those 1 week things, because they figured to bounce and play well last night. But you're right. I think it is a little lopsided.
Is loaded.
It is a little lopsided AFC over, and maybe that gives a better opportunity to the Philadelphia Eagles.